The North Korean leader walked to the south. They hugged, they talked, they spoke.
They vowed to end the Korean War and to denuclearize the peninsula.
When did you learn that the DNC and Hillary Clinton campaign had funded Christopher Steele's work?
Yeah, I still don't know that for a fact.
If he didn't really know that Hillary and the Democrats funded this and he's using it in FISA, what does that say about his competence?
49 brand new additional pages of newly uncovered text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page.
Peter Strzok says right after Comey's fired, quote, having a tough time processing tonight, Liz, feeling a profound sense of loss.
John Legend tried to get Kanye West to change his mind about supporting President Trump. West responded, is a tactic based on fear used to manipulate my free thought.
It's nice to be back on Southern soil and back home. This is the best school in the country. USC.
To be young again.
Yeah, Ainsley woke up that campus early this morning. It was pitch black and the place was packed as the sun came up. These students are happy to see Ainsley and happy that the regular sections are over. Finals start next week.
Well, today's the last day.
Yeah. It makes me want to be back in college again, though, doesn't it? Ainsley, how fun is it to be back there again?
Hey, y'all. Oh, it's so great to be back on campus. I can't believe it was like half of my life.
There's Brian behind you.
Flies by. I feel so old. Hey, Brian. Steve, there's a cutout of you somewhere, too.
Yeah, I'm a little two-dimensional.
Steve. Abby, you're somewhere in the crowd, too.
I'm lost.
Yeah, we've got a great rest of the show coming up. We have... There's Steve. Yes. So Nikki Haley, when she was promoted to ambassador, Governor McMaster took over here. So he's going to come on the show and talk. I know we have Geraldo coming up. My brother and my dad are in the crowd. They were over there talking to Senator Lindsey Graham and saying hey to him. So they're going to come up, too, and talk about their experiences at the university. We have Tim Scott, our other senator, who wrote the book with Trey Gowdy, Congressman Trey Gowdy, and they're both going to come on, talk about their book and news of the day. Look at Brian back there giving me the peace sign.
Right.
Well, it's been a great telecast.
Look at this one.
I know it. There I am.
How great is that?
Wearing a great shirt.
Dragon Energy and Steve.
So I could use some of that right now.
Cute, aren't they?
All right. So Ainsley's going to continue to be there the entire final hour of Fox and Friends.
I'm afraid if we stay on that shot, the wrong finger's going to pop up, and I'm going to have to apologize.
Oh, I don't think that would ever happen there.
Yeah.
Geraldo Rivera joins us right now. Good morning to you, Geraldo.
So nice to see the former Palmetto Queen. They are back in her natural environment.
Well, Geraldo, we start this Friday, this hour, with a Fox News alert. It looks as if after 65 years of hostilities, North and South Korea are officially, in the next year, going to declare an end to the Korean War. Geraldo.
It is a fantastic, apparent breakthrough. I don't want to be naive about it. I don't want to pretend that we haven't had false starts before. But when you consider that just several months ago, it was little Rocket Man, and he was threatening and shooting ICBMs.
Bigger than your button.
He could reach Guam easily, and then he could reach, Seattle, and then New York. And he kept evolving, and he sent those missiles over Japan, and now look where we are now. It is a fantastic, apparent breakthrough. I keep modifying it because I was there in the early 80s when they had a rapprochement. Not unlike this, maybe not quite as dramatic. You didn't have Kim, the senior, crossing over the DMZ actually into South Korea.
I mean, that's what happened this morning. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
They planted a tree together.
I love the idea that they're doing televised reunions of families divided by the war, that they will have a formal treaty declaring an end to the war. There's Moon and Kim, and my goodness, look at them holding hands.
Think of the timing of all this, Geraldo. Mike Pompeo, we have photos just coming in our newsroom overnight of his meeting just a couple weeks ago with Kim Jong-un, but also President Trump with that meeting just a few weeks away. He tweeted about this morning, 3 tweets about what's going on in Korea. He said, after a furious year of missile launches and nuclear testing, a historic meeting between North and South Korea is now taking place. Good things are happening, but only time will tell. Korean War to end. The United States and all of its great people should be very proud of what is now taking place in Korea. And finally, he says, please do not forget the great help that my good friend President Xi of China, this is a good point, has given to the United States, particularly at the border of North Korea. Without him, it would have been a much longer, tougher process. He mentions China, and they often get lost in this conversation, but yet they might be the most important piece
Behind
of
the
this entire
scenes
puzzle.
Well, absolutely. They measured the traffic on the bridge from North Korea into China, the prime artery of supplies to North Korea, and it was clear that the Chinese were abiding by the sanctions. So as the screws tightened on Kim's regime, it could be he finally said, listen, I can't support people. Remember that one soldier who ran away and they found all these parasites in his belly from malnutrition and all the rest of it? It could be the situation just got so dire that Kim finally said, okay, let's do this. Or this could be the most elaborate subterfuge. He could be leading us down the primrose path, and then we'll say, you know,
surprise!
Here's my nuke. I'm going to rattle it one more time.
The belief was in some inside the White House is that the legitimate military option that got to North Korea for the first time ever let them understand that we were serious, and along with the words that came out of President Trump's mouth. However, I think about Otto Warmbier and his family and what they did to him. They are suing the country. Mark Short said this is said this morning he's a legislator, the chief legislative advisor there. He came out yesterday, had no problem saying this is a murderous regime. We have our eyes open. The president says, if I don't like what I hear, I'll get up. So he's lowering expectations and not letting people think that he's caught in the euphoria of the moment. But I want everyone, in case you were not up to a couple hours ago, this was the unscripted moment between Moon and Kim into the south part of the Korean divide.
And we are declaring a new era of peace. Over the past decades, we endured the tragedy of secession, but now we are here together because we overcame all those hardships. Let us go forward step by step for the bright future together. I sincerely hope that this declaration can satisfy all of you who have got high expectations and aspirations for the peace and unification.
The big question, Geraldo, is apparently they have agreed to work together to denuclearize. The North would like some, we'll go along with some limits. The United States wants it to be complete.
Well, remember the relationship that used to exist between North Korea and Libya. Gaddafi was well down the road to developing his own nuclear weapons. He gave them up because he wanted to make peace with the West and he wanted to normalize relations. And look, Gaddafi ended up dead in a sewer pipe, killed by his own people. If he had kept his nukes, some would argue he would have been more insulated from that kind of reprisal. So that's the cautionary tale from Kim's point of view. Now, does that mean that he can't go forward? I think that there's plenty of room there. If he freezes, he is already frozen. He's allowing U.S. military exercises in the southern South Korea in the southern part of the peninsula. He has not complained. It really does seem to me that this is different. This has a vibe of history. This reminds me of Nixon China, 1973.
Does. And Geraldo, just quickly on a human level, because you have been over there, you think about the people that died during the Korean War, bringing families together. What is today? What does it mean for so many people that have suffered?
Well, let me just say, as a proud Puerto Rican, the Borinqueños, the military was segregated in World War II. By the Korean War, they were integrated. The unit from Puerto Rico was in North Korea. They suffered devastating, they were decimated in terms of casualties. So this has a special resonance for people of Puerto Rican descent. To that sacrifice, and to our Marines and China and all those, that their sacrifice was not in vain. This is really a very big deal. I would love to see, I think it's probably...
You remember this war, MacArthur, it got fired, and we were going to drop a bomb on China?
Four nuclear weapons. He told Truman that he could end the war with four nuclear weapons.
I think you're right, Geraldo. It does feel different, so let's keep our fingers crossed that something happens. Geraldo, thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
My pleasure. Thank you.
See you on radio?
I'll see you in the radio.
Jillian, if my script is right, you're next.
Okay, I'll take it from here. How about that? And we do have a Fox News alert to get to. The evacuation order just lifted after a massive explosion at an oil refinery in Wisconsin. Flames shooting through the giant plume of black smoke in Superior near the Minnesota border. 11 people rushed to the hospital. The blast heard and felt miles away. It is now under investigation. Longtime NBC News anchor Tom Brokaw is denying brand new allegations of sexual misconduct. Former NBC correspondent and Fox News anchor Linda Vester says the unwanted advances were made in 1994 and 1995. Brokaw released a statement saying, in part, quote, the meetings were brief, cordial, and appropriate. And despite Linda's allegations, I made no romantic overtures towards her at that time or any other. President Trump will welcome German Chancellor Angela Merkel to the White House today. The leaders are expected to discuss the Iran deal, looming U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs, and a planned Russian gas pipeline. The president also expected to press Merkel to increase Germany's funding for NATO. Let's look at your headlines. Send it back to you.
Busy news day. Thank you, Jillian.
All right, coming up, James Comey once again denying he's a leaker. That's what he told Brett last night.
And I didn't consider it part of an FBI file, all the things that I talked about with Anderson.
You wrote it as an FBI director. It was a work product.
No, it was not.
Really? Brett is here with reaction to his wide-ranging interview next. Plus, still ahead, Kellyanne Conway at the White House, and Steve Hilton will join us live.
But first, here's the Keenan High School Marching Band playing with Ainsley at the University of South Carolina.
They're having too much fun out there.
And I didn't consider it part of an FBI file, all the things that I talked about with Anderson.
You wrote it as an FBI director. It was a work product.
No, it was not. It was my personal aide to memoir.
To the president? You said in the memos, I said, I don't do sneaky things, I don't leak, I don't do weasel moves. But, I mean, we can argue what a leak is, but that's a leak, isn't it?
It's not.
Really? I guess that's where the rubber hit the road.
Former FBI Director James Comey said last night to Brett he's not a leaker in a wide-ranging interview with Brett Baer.
Yep, and Brett Baer joins us right now with some of the takeaways. And I watched some of the incident analysis last night, one of the most intense 30 minutes, 40 minutes I've seen. Brett, unbelievable job. I don't think he was expecting a lot of those questions, nor, I think, were we expecting a lot of his answers. First off, in the break between, what was that like in the break between segments with the FBI?
During the commercial.
Well, first of all, he got there about 12 minutes late. He was said he was in traffic, and we were alerted about 10 minutes before. So we kind of shuffled things around. So it started off a little bit rushed. But when we got through that, and kind of I started with the Clinton probe and got to the Trump probe and started to go down the leaking questions there. Obviously, it was tense back and forth, but in the commercial break, he turned to me and said, hey, those are tough but fair questions. And then we continued on after the break. I think, listen, what struck me were a couple of things. One was that after all this time and after all the talk about the dossier, that he did not know that the Democrats, the DNC, and Hillary Clinton were funding that. That was pretty shocking if you think about 3 FISA application renewals.
Actually, Brett,
based on that very thing.
We have that sound of that very question. Let's play that.
When did you learn that the DNC and Hillary Clinton campaign had funded Christopher Steele's work?
Yeah, I still don't know that for a fact.
What do you mean?
I've only seen it in the media. I never knew exactly which Democrats had funded. I knew it was funded first by Republicans, opposed to Donald.
But that's not true.
I'm sorry?
That's not true. That the dossier that Christopher Steele worked on was funded by Republicans?
My understanding was the activity was begun, that Steele was hired to look into, was first funded by Republicans, then picked up, the important thing was picked up by Democrats opposed to Donald Trump.
It does look as if he's got some gaps in what he was told about it by his agents.
Yeah, and the fact that we're at this point and there's not a definitive answer there is pretty shocking.
Well, Brett, what's behind that? Do you believe he's couching it because an Inspector General report's coming up, or do you believe that he was giving you sincere answers?
That's a great question, Brian, and I don't know the answer to that. I do know that I felt like he was trying to answer the questions that I asked. I was just surprised with his lack of knowledge on specifics like that at the center of an investigation. The other one that kind of surprised me were a couple of things. One was the fact that he doesn't admit a leak, and going down that leak line was really something. I mean, kind of twisting the word leak, and that he thought that all of those memos were his personal diary, if you will, not work product as an FBI director talking to a president.
But don't you think all those points, Brett, are to protect him from any common legal problems.
Of course, yeah. And he admitted that he has been interviewed by the IG specifically on his handling of the memos. The fact that he handed it to 3 different people who now are a part of his legal team, one of them who worked for the FBI, it was not just a Columbia professor and a good friend. I think there are going to be questions on Capitol Hill and possibly in this IG report.
Yeah, but another big moment that stuck out to me is when you asked his intent to serve, and you asked, would you still be head of the FBI if you weren't fired? And he said yes, which made it very clear that he put all the blame on his firing, it sounds like, on President Trump.
Right, and he said, you know, that he would be there as of tonight had he not been fired. Now, I mean, just in context, the reason I wanted to end and dismount, if you would, on that is that, you know, throughout this book tour, there has been a lot about his interaction with President Trump and how he believes he's not morally fit to serve and how he basically is encouraging people to vote Trump out of office in numerous ways, in different sentences, he said, and then to see at the end that he would still be there tonight if he hadn't been fired.
Well, I think James Comey in the commercial was accurate. It was tough but fair, and it was an eye-opener. Brett, great job last night.
It was a great interview, Brett.
You laid the groundwork for a lot of follow-ups.
Well done. Good to see you this morning.
All right. All right, coming up on this Friday, Kellyanne Conway is going to be joining us live from the White House. And
Kanye West's relationship with the president is splitting the left and the right. How can the country close this divide? It's a great question. Congressman Trey Gowdy and Senator Tim Scott join Ainsley live on the ground there. There they are in South Carolina. You don't want to miss their interview. It is just ahead.
They are unified.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Here's a look at some headlines. Today, a cold-blooded cop killer will walk away a free man. Herman Bell's release coming after a failed last-minute attempt by the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association to block his parole. But a panel of judges will hear arguments to put Bell back in prison next month. Bell thrown behind bars for his role in the murders of NYPD officers Joe Piagentini and Waverly Jones in 1971. The Ten Commandments Monument is outside Arkansas's capital once again. The new display now protected by 4 concrete barriers. In June, the original structure was demolished less than 24 hours after its installation when a man rammed his car into it. Several groups oppose the monument, including the Satanic Temple, which plans to sue the state. That's a look at your headlines. I will send it back to you.
Thank you very much.
And then we'll go out to Ainsley in beautiful South Carolina. Hey, Ainsley.
Hey, Ainsley.
Hey, Brian. Hey, Abby. Hey, Steve. Thank you so much. All right, the former FBI Director James Comey continuing his media blitz last night on Special Report with Bret Baier. So here to react is House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy, Congressman Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, and his good friend Senator Tim Scott. They are the authors of this book right here. It's called Unified: How Our Unlikely Friendship Gives Us Hope for a Divided Country.
Absolutely.
When I read that this morning, I thought of Kanye West and President Trump because they have an unlikely friendship. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I will tell you that the fact of the matter is, when you think about Kanye's position and Trump's position, you would say they have nothing in common. But the reality of it is, President Trump's policy direction has helped lower African American unemployment to the lowest in recorded history. Hispanic, lowest in recorded history. The regulatory environment, the smaller it is, the more people come back into the workforce and the more opportunities we see. So while there are a lot of differences that you would imagine between the two of them, the fact is, if you're both focusing on moving the country together with no exclusions, you can see why Kanye is talking positively about President Trump.
As an African-American male, is Kanye, though, betraying the African-American community? That's what John Legend was saying.
And a Southern word, that's hogwash. There's no way in the world that that's called betraying anything, except for standing up for those folks who cannot stand up for themselves. Chance the Rapper said it well. Because you're black does not mean you're a Democrat. Period. We should have a real discussion about the underlying policies that are leading towards the best economy and the best economic activity in minority communities we've seen in a very long time. And the president signed on to creating opportunity zones in the most distressed communities, which will disproportionately have a positive impact on the black community. So why would it be contradictory or inconsistent with what is in the best interest of black males specifically, being one, than to create opportunities for higher educational achievements, more jobs, and frankly, more wealth in the African American community? We got to look at the policies. The policies are going in the right direction.
Trey, how can our country become united, as your book says?
Focus on the things you have in common. When I heard the Kanye West tweet, I thought about the lead singer of U2, Bono, had a very close relationship with Jesse Helms, who makes this guy seem like a flaming liberal. I mean, Jesse Helms may be the most conservative senator that I can recall, but yet the lead singer of the world's greatest rock and roll band had a relationship with him because they both cared about what was happening on the continent of Africa. The same with President Bush. He and Bono had a relationship. So I'm convinced that we have something in common with everyone. So while we run towards the divisiveness part, I don't understand it, and I think it's tearing our country
We are
apart.
more alike than we are different, right? And we don't have to hate each other if we have different opinions. What about Comey's media blitz? We had him on last night. Brett interviewed him.
I thought Brett did a fantastic job of uncovering some really important information.
Do you think, I heard, we've been playing your soundbite. You said, what did you say about the leaking? You said if this is a leak, then he calls it a leak, I call it a felony.
Well,
That's what you said.
You know, Comey said, I don't do sneaky things, I don't leak, and I don't do weasel things. And then his definition of leak is to disseminate classified information. Okay, that's actually a crime. A leak is if you and I have an expectation of privacy in a conversation, and then I go and divulge the contents of it. That's not a legal issue, it's a moral issue, but it's a leak. And for him to say, I don't leak, while I am memorializing and then leaking private conversations with the President of the United States, you know, the thing with Comey is he is the hero in every story he tells. He's the hero. And he has what strikes me as a double standard. If this person lies, he wants him to be President of the United States. If Andy McCabe lies, he's still a stand-up guy. But he thinks if President Trump lies, he should be impeached. And that's relativism. It's antithetical to morals. And that's what I said last night.
Thank you so much for being here and representing our state.
Yes,
what an honor.
Welcome home.
We all love you.
Coming home.
This guy back here, Brian and Steve are reading your book. Can you see
they
that?
like it.
They want you to sign it. I promised them you would. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kellyanne Conway is going to join us live from the White House coming up next, so stay with us.
A man's good word and a handshake are all you need. Folks know if they're falling on hard times, they can fall back on.
Here we go, a Fox News alert. History being made on the Korean Peninsula as leaders from the North and South agree to end the decades-long Korean War. How about 6 decades plus?
So is this a preview of what's to come with his upcoming summit with Kim Jong-un? Here with the reaction to these developments is Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. Tough act to follow with yesterday's interview.
Yeah, yesterday's. And by the way, I know our producers were working for a very long time to try to set that up. Thank you very much for making that all happen. It was great.
So the president wanted to do that. The president had a great time bringing his case directly to the American people, as he does on social media and these bilateral Q&As, certainly at the South Lawn and in the press pool sprays and with other interviews. And the president has said that he would like to perhaps come once a month, and as news breaks, but he'll keep us guessing.
Come to Fox and Friends once a month?
Yes.
All right.
He said that he'd like to replicate that on a pretty much a monthly basis. And, back in the private sector, he was on every week, every Monday morning, certain times, the same time every week, and he was able to go through 15 or 20 minutes of his view on policy. And many people went back and listened to those interviews for some clues as to how he might govern as president and what his positions would be on the issues of the day. And you see that consistency, that unbroken thread between some of those interviews and much of the policy he's doing today. But I had to credit him yesterday. I said, you didn't even put a semicolon in there. He just covered so much territory that he leaves the rest of us cold in terms of our analytical and conversational skills. And the president was able to cover so much ground with you yesterday and appreciated the platform because it connects him with the American people, not just on Fox News, but that really was the buzz around the globe yesterday in large part because everybody had to replay your clips. That must have been delicious.
Well, and amazingly, I mean, as you know, with the 24-hour news cycle, so much has happened even since that interview yesterday, specifically in Korea, in North Korea. The war, so the President Trump's been up tweeting this morning as he loves to talk directly to the people. He says Korean War to end. The United States and all of its great people should be very proud of what is now taking place in Korea. What is coming out of the White House this morning? The timing of this, Kellyanne, you think just weeks away from that meeting President Trump is going to have or is supposed to have with Kim Jong-un. What do you say this morning?
Abby, it would be difficult to overstate the consequences, significance, and the rapid succession of events in short order. And this president created the climate that allows for this. Obviously, North and South Korea had not met in this fashion in a very long time. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And it's this president who wishes to achieve what so many other presidents have either attempted or, in fact, promised and not been able to deliver upon. I think the timing of CIA Director and now Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's confirmation yesterday, which, by the way, wasn't close, the timing of his confirmation as our new Secretary of State, he got sworn in by Justice Alito and then went on his on a trip. This is incredibly important because it is Secretary of State Pompeo has already been over there meeting with Kim Jong-un and setting the stage. And it's this president who has said he is willing to come to the table, but he always has an exit strategy. If it's not working for the American people, if it's not working for diplomatic purposes, then he can just walk away. That's what deal makers and negotiators do.
Kellyanne, I was fascinated to see that he told us yesterday that Mike Pompeo wasn't even scheduled to meet with Kim Jong-un. He had heard he was in another meeting with his contemporary in another part of the building, and he asked him to come over, and then they had this hour meeting. What do you think that tells you about what could be happening? This might just be a different script than we've been seeing for 65 years.
Well, that's really the point here. Thank you for raising that. It's really North Korea that's responding to what the president is making happen and what South Korea is making happen. And even the president was thanking China today because we know that a denuclearized Korean peninsula benefits everyone, not just in that region, certainly America and Americans. But as is his wont, this morning on his social media platform, the president credited the American people and so they should be very happy. This is a democracy. They elected him to be the commander-in-chief and the president of the United States, and that carries with it the ability to make significant, dramatic changes in short order. I think many elements of the swamp are still not accustomed to Trump-Pence pace. They operate on swamp speed. But when you see actions like this around the globe, you recognize the difference it makes to have a non-politician who's been thinking about these issues for many years in a very different way and bringing together a national security and diplomatic team around him that agrees and is forging ahead thusly.
And everybody is on the same page regarding that. Fingers crossed that something good happens in North and South Korea. Meanwhile, Kellyanne, when the president was on with us yesterday, it was shortly after it was announced that Admiral Ronnie Jackson was going to pull his name as the next VA Secretary nominee. We did ask the president if he had another name in mind. He said yes. He did reveal it was somebody who did have some government experience. When's the president going to be announcing this new person?
Well, he's expected to announce a new Veterans Administration nominee on his timetable. It will be in the near future. And there are many people who would like to have that position because there are many people committed to continuing the president's agenda of progress for veterans. I mean, one thing lost in all the mainstream media maelstrom coverage and the character assassination of Admiral and Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who has served honorably 3 different presidents, has glowing recommendations, including please promote him ahead of his peers by none other than President Barack Obama. That aside, there are many people who want to build on the progress, because lost in the maelstrom of character assassination has been how much progress this president has made with respect to our nation's veterans. He says the VA Choice Act is close at hand, the Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act, the 24/7 hotline, the disposition of veterans' benefits. There are so many different pieces of legislation, executive actions that have happened in 16 short months that truly have improved the lives of our veterans. This president ran for many reasons, but you've got to put military veterans, law enforcement top of the list, and he's delivering on those promises. He is discussing that list of possibilities with folks internally. I've been part of some of those conversations, and I'm not going to get ahead of the president in making personnel announcements. And I hope that Dr. Jackson holds his head high and recognizes that this could be a brutal town where people not under oath are going out on TV and saying things anonymously and without letting him have his say. And I hope he will have his day and his say at some point.
Yeah, Democrats could, if they wanted to be nice about it, they could have gone back to the White House secretly and said, hey, we've got these concerns, can you take a look at it, versus dragging him through the mud so publicly. It's unfortunate that had to happen. But a big day tomorrow. It is National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. This is something that is so important for many people across this country, but for you in particular, Kellyanne.
Abby, thank you for amplifying it today on Fox and Friends. This is a nonpartisan issue in search of bipartisan solutions, and one of the best ways that we prevent misuse of opioid drugs, prescription opioids, is to clear out expired, unnecessary, unused prescriptions from your medicine cabinet, your pocket, your pocketbooks, your kitchen counters. So many heroin users self-report that they started with prescription opioids. They were misusing their own prescription, and they were misusing other people's prescription. So National Take Back Day is put forth by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. Essentially, you can go to CVS, Walgreens, you can go to local law enforcement, you can go to takebackday.dea.gov. and to find a local drop-off point. All you do is take those unused prescriptions, tell your neighbors, your colleagues, your community, grandmom and grandpa, clear them out and dispose them. Last Take Back Day in October, the president talked about it, he tweeted about it, he did his radio address about it. And we collected a historic 900,000 pounds. I want to repeat that. 900,000 pounds of tiny little pills, enough to fill 3 Boeing 757 aircraft. So clear them out. This president in his policy rollout has called for a 30% reduction in prescribing over the next 3 years. You cut down the demand by cutting the supply. So folks, don't hoard them. Get rid of them. You can't flush them. That goes into the drinking water. You can't just throw them away, because that can get in the hands of pets or children or folks who are trying to misuse prescriptions. Take Back Day, 10 to 2 tomorrow. Check it out. Lots of locations around the country.
It is, as you said, not political. It saves lives.
That's
Kellyanne, so important.
Thank you very much for joining us. And,
Thank you.
And breaking some news at the top of this interview, starting, in the next month or so, the President of the United States will stop by Fox and Friends once a month. We're going to ask him some hard questions, and then he's going to answer them.
Or as breaking news warrants, is what he said. But hey, it's almost May. May starts Tuesday.
The tease. All right. Thank you so much, Kellyanne. Good to see you this morning.
Take care.
Well, that's going to be great. That was quite an event
Isn't
yesterday.
there news all the time?
There is. All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, the European Union has a new campaign to fight fake news. But Steve Hilton says it's a battle they will not win. Steve Hilton, next.
And South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster joins Ainsley live at her alma mater. We all know him. He's coming up next.